I'm Isabella Morgan, CEO of Apex Financial Group. You judged me before I spoke. Effective immediately, you are fired. Picture this. A young black CEO, ignored and insulted, flips the script in a bank's conference room, firing a dismissive teller on the spot. Where are you tuning in from? Drop your city in the comments and tell us, can you guess how this bold move reshapes an entire company? Welcome to the Standards of Respect, a story of power, respect, and legacy. Will Isabella's stand spark change or chaos? Stick around to find out. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell to catch our latest stories. Share where you're watching from below, and let's predict how this ends together. Don't miss the twist. Comment, like, and let's dive in. The morning sun hung low over Cleveland, Ohio, casting a golden sheen across the asphalt of Euclid Avenue. At exactly 8:57 a.m., a sleek black Audi purred to a stop in the parking lot of a modest bank branch, its tinted windows reflecting the city's waking pulse. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Isabella Morgan, a 28-year-old black woman whose presence seemed to command the very air around her. Her long, jet-black hair cascaded over her shoulders like a silken waterfall, framing a face that was both strikingly beautiful and fiercely resolute. Dressed in a tailored white blouse and a charcoal pencil skirt that hugged her 5'8" frame, she carried a minimalist leather clutch, understated yet screaming sophistication. No entourage, no fanfare. Just Isabella, a woman who, at 28, had transformed Apex Financial Group into a towering empire, doubling its valuation in a mere 18 months. Her latest triumph? Acquiring a sprawling Midwest bank chain, including this very branch she was about to enter. The glass doors hissed open at 9:01 a.m., and Isabella stepped inside, her low heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor. The lobby smelled of polished wood and the faint, bitter tang of a coffee machine humming in the corner. A flat-screen TV flickered silently with stock market updates, and the soft chime of a phone rang unanswered somewhere in the back. Isabella's sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail: the empty chairs lined against the wall, the faint smudge on the glass counter, the way the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows. She approached the business services desk, where a blonde teller stood, her fingers dancing across a keyboard. Rachel Summers, her nameplate read, her blue eyes flicking up briefly to meet Isabella's before narrowing slightly, as if sizing her up. Then without a word, Rachel's gaze dropped back to her screen, her lips pursing in a way that said, "You're not worth my time." "Good morning," Isabella said, her voice smooth and warm, laced with a quiet authority that seemed to ripple through the air. "I'm here to discuss the transition paperwork for our business accounts. I was told Marcus would be available." Her words were precise, her smile polite but firm, the kind that invited cooperation without begging for it. Rachel didn't look up. Her fingers kept tapping, the sound sharp in the quiet lobby. "You need an appointment for that," she said, her tone clipped, as if Isabella had wandered into the wrong building. "Marcus isn't in yet. Have a seat." She gestured vaguely toward a row of cushioned chairs near the wall, her eyes never leaving the screen. It was a dismissal, plain and cold, delivered with the casual arrogance of someone who thought they held all the cards. Isabella's smile didn't waver, but her eyes sharpened, catching the slight curl of Rachel's lip, the way her shoulders stiffened as if annoyed by the interruption. "I called yesterday," Isabella said, her voice still calm, each word measured like a chess move. "They confirmed Marcus would be available between 9 and 11. She tilted her head slightly, her hair catching the light, a subtle challenge wrapped in courtesy. Rachel sighed, a long, theatrical exhale that seemed to suck the oxygen from the room. She rolled her eyes. Rolled them, the motion so blatant it was almost performative. "I'll let someone know," she said, her voice dripping with irritation. "Sit over there." She pointed again, more forcefully this time, as if Isabella were a child who hadn't listened the first time. Then she turned back to her screen, her fingers resuming their relentless tapping, the conversation over in her mind. For a moment, Isabella stood still, her gaze lingering on Rachel's profile, the tight bun, the smudge of pink lipstick, the way her jaw twitched as if daring Isabella to push further. Most people would have bristled, would have raised their voice or stormed off, But Isabella Morgan was not like most people. She was a woman who had faced boardrooms of skeptics, outmaneuvered titans twice her age, and built an empire on the ruins of doubt. This? This was nothing. A spark, not a fire. Not yet. She turned, her movements graceful but deliberate, and walked to the row of chairs. She sat, crossing her legs at the ankles, her clutch resting on her lap like a silent weapon. The clock on the wall ticked to 9:07, its second hand slicing through the silence. Isabella's eyes drifted to the lobby, taking in the details others might miss. The faint coffee stain on the carpet, the way the morning light slanted through the windows, the soft hum of the air conditioning. She was patient, but not passive. Her mind was already calculating, mapping out the next move, the next moment. Then the glass doors opened again, and a white man in a navy polo shirt strode in, his loafers squeaking faintly. Rachel's head snapped up and her face transformed. A bright smile bloomed, her voice suddenly warm and musical. "Mr. Thompson, good to see you. How's the weekend going?" She leaned forward, her elbows resting on the counter, her entire demeanor shifting as if a switch had been flipped. The man chuckled, launching into a story about a golf game, and within moments Rachel was ushering him toward an office in the back, her laughter trailing behind her. Isabella watched, her expression serene, but her eyes were a storm. She noted the way Rachel's hand grazed the man's arm, the way she glanced back at the lobby to ensure no one else was waiting, except, of course, Isabella, who sat there invisible in Rachel's world. The clock ticked to 9:10, then 9:12. Isabella's fingers rested lightly on her clutch, her posture perfect, her breathing even. But beneath that calm exterior, a fire was kindling, slow and deliberate, fed by every second of disregard. She wasn't angry, not yet. Anger was too loud, too reckless. What Isabella felt was something sharper, something honed over years of being underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed. It was resolved, cold, and unyielding, the kind that could topple empires, or, in this case, a single bank branch. She knew who she was. She knew the power she held, the weight of her name, the reach of her influence, and she knew with a certainty that bordered on prophecy that this moment, this quiet, unassuming morning, was about to become something unforgettable. The lobby remained still, the TV flickering, the coffee machine humming. Rachel returned to her desk, her smile fading as she glanced at Isabella, then quickly looked away. Isabella didn't move, didn't speak. She simply waited, a queen on a chessboard, her next move already planned. The clock ticked to 9:15 and the air seemed to thicken, as if the room itself sensed what was coming. This was the calm before the storm, the unseen power of Isabella Morgan poised to strike. The clock on the bank's wall ticked past 9:15 a.m., its relentless rhythm slicing through the sterile quiet of the Euclid Avenue branch. Isabella Morgan sat in the lobby, her posture as composed as a marble statue, her long, jet-black hair catching slivers of morning light. Her tailored white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt were impeccable, her minimalist leather clutch a silent testament to her understated power. But to the staff behind the glass counter, she was invisible, a woman who didn't belong in their world of quick smiles and prioritized clients. The air was thick with the scent of copier ink and brewing coffee, but beneath it lingered something heavier, the weight of disregard, growing with every second Isabella was forced to wait. She had been here since 9:01. Her request to discuss business account transitions met with a dismissive eye roll from Rachel Summers, the blonde teller whose tight bun and pink lipstick seemed to sharpen her disdain. Now at 9:25, Isabella's sharp eyes tracked the lobby's pulse. A second customer, a white woman in a floral dress, sailed through the glass doors and was greeted instantly by Rachel's saccharine, "Good morning, Mrs. Larson. Right this way." The woman was ushered to a desk, Rachel's laughter trailing like a perfume cloud. Isabella's fingers rested lightly on her clutch, her breathing steady, but her mind was a forge, tempering patience into something harder, something precise. The TV flickered with a muted weather forecast, predicting clouds by noon. Isabella's gaze drifted to the counter, where Rachel now chatted with a co-worker, a wiry man with a nameplate reading Derek. Their voices were low but not low enough. "She's still sitting there," Rachel muttered, tossing a glance at Isabella. Probably thinks she's got some big account. Look at that skirt. Cheap knockoff. Derek snickered, his eyes flicking to Isabella before darting away. The words landed like sparks on dry grass. But Isabella's face remained serene, her jaw tightening only slightly. She wasn't here to prove herself to them. She was here for Apex Financial Group, her empire, and the bank chain it had swallowed whole. But every slight, every whispered jab was fuel, and Isabella Morgan was a woman who knew how to wield fire. At 9:30, a third customer entered, a middle-aged white man in a gray suit, his briefcase swinging. Rachel's smile snapped back on, bright as a spotlight. "Mr. Callahan, how's the new office?" she chirped, leaning forward, her elbows on the counter. The man grinned, launching into a story about renovations, and Rachel nodded, laughed, and escorted him to an office in under 2 minutes. Isabella watched, her eyes narrowing imperceptibly. 3 customers, none black, all served with a warmth she hadn't been offered. The clock ticked to 9:35. Her request to speak with Marcus, confirmed yesterday, had been brushed off without a single check. Rachel's words, "Sit over there," echoed in her mind, each syllable a brick in a wall of disrespect. Isabella stood, her movements fluid but deliberate, like a panther stirring from rest. She approached the counter again, her heels clicking softly, a sound that seemed to cut through the lobby's hum. Rachel looked up, her smile vanishing as if Isabella's presence were a personal affront. "Excuse me," Isabella said, her voice calm but laced with steel. "Has Marcus arrived?" Rachel's lips pursed, her blue eyes flashing with irritation. "Still not here," she snapped. "I told you, we'll call you when someone's ready." The ma'am she'd used earlier was gone, replaced by a tone that bordered on contempt, as if Isabella were wasting her time. Isabella tilted her head, her hair shimmering under the lights. "Could I speak with whoever's available then?" she asked, her words measured, each one a challenge wrapped in civility. Rachel leaned back, crossing her arms. "Look, I said we'll call you," she said, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. "You can't just walk in and expect to be seen." The words hung in the air, bold and reckless, a gauntlet thrown at a woman who had toppled giants. Derek, still at the counter, stifled a smirk, his eyes darting between Rachel and Isabella. For a moment, the lobby seemed to hold its breath. The TV droned, the coffee machine gurgled, but all eyes, those of a passing customer, a janitor in the corner, were on Isabella. Most would have snapped, would have demanded respect or stormed out. But Isabella Morgan was not like most people. Her eyes locked on Rachel's, unblinking, and in that gaze was a promise. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." She nodded once, a slow, deliberate motion, then turned and walked back to her seat, her grace unshaken. The clock ticked to 9:45. Nearly an hour had passed, each minute a testament to her restraint. Then came the whisper that changed everything. Rachel, leaning toward Derek, muttered, "She thinks she's somebody with that outfit, probably just here to open a savings account." The words were meant to be private, but they carried, slicing through the lobbies quiet like a blade. Derek's laugh was quick, nervous, but it landed like a blow. Isabella's jaw. The air in the Euclid Avenue bank branch crackled with unspoken tension as the clock struck 10:01 a.m. Isabella Morgan, her long jet-black hair shimmering under the harsh fluorescent lights, stood poised in the lobby, her tailored white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt a stark contrast to the chaos she was about to unleash. The weight of an hour's disrespect, Rachel Summers' eye rolls, her dismissive sneers, the whispered insults about her appearance, had forged something unyielding in Isabella's gaze. She was no longer just a woman waiting for a meeting. She was the 28-year-old CEO of Apex Financial Group, a titan who had swallowed this bank chain whole, and the room was about to feel the full force of her authority. Jasmine Carter, the young black teller with a hesitant step and wide eyes, had just confirmed Isabella's identity, her voice trembling with the weight of recognition. "I need to speak with your branch manager." "Now," Isabella had said, her tone gentle but unyielding, a velvet glove over an iron fist. Jasmine scurried toward the back, her footsteps a rapid tattoo against the marble floor. The lobby seemed to pause, the hum of the coffee machine, and the muted TV fading into a distant hum. Isabella stood still, her minimalist leather clutch clasped in one hand, her posture regal, as if the room itself were bowing to her presence. Then the glass doors swung open with a whoosh, and in strode Kenneth Harper, the regional director, his navy suit crisp and his green eyes sharp with urgency. At 6'2", with a jawline that could cut glass and a stride that commanded attention, he was a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a boardroom drama. His gaze swept the lobby, landing on Isabella like a spotlight. "Ms. Morgan," he said, his voice smooth but taut, like a violin string stretched to its limit. "I'm Kenneth Harper, Regional Director. There's been a misunderstanding. May we speak privately?" His words were polite, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic, as if he sensed the storm brewing. Isabella's lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes were cold, unyielding. "Here is fine," she said, her voice low but resonant, slicing through the lobby stillness. The words landed like a gavel, final and unshakable. Kenneth hesitated, his jaw tightening, then turned to the staff scattered behind the counter. "Everyone, conference room! Now!" he barked, his tone leaving no room for argument. Rachel Summers, her blonde bun slightly askew, paled, her blue eyes darting to her co-worker Derek, who looked equally rattled. Their heels clicked nervously as they filed toward the back, the sound echoing like a death knell. The conference room was a sterile box of beige walls and a long oak table, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. 5 employees sat stiffly: Rachel, Derek, 2 other tellers, and a junior manager with a clipboard clutched like a shield. Isabella entered last, her presence a gravitational force that seemed to pull the air from the room. Kenneth stood by the door, arms crossed, his handsome face a mask of grim anticipation. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint creak of a chair, as Rachel shifted uncomfortably, her hands twisting in her lap. Isabella stood at the head of the table, her clutch set down with a deliberate softness that somehow felt louder than a slam. Her eyes swept the room, lingering on each face, and when she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, but laced with a fury so controlled it was almost surgical. "I'm Isabella Morgan, CEO of Apex Financial Group," she began, the words landing like stones in still water. "We acquired this bank chain last week. I came here to ensure a smooth transition for our business accounts. Instead, I waited over an hour, was dismissed, ignored, and insulted." Her gaze locked on Rachel, who shrank in her seat, her face a mask of dread. "Rachel, can you explain why I was told to wait while others were served? Or why do you feel the need to comment on my appearance?" Rachel's mouth opened, then closed, her lips trembling. I didn't mean," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, her usual bravado crumbling under Isabella's stare. "You did," Isabella cut in, her tone even but unyielding, a blade slicing through excuses. "And that's the problem. You judged me before I spoke, assumed I didn't belong. That's not just unprofessional, it's unacceptable." She paused, letting the words sink in, her eyes never leaving Rachel's. "Effective immediately, Rachel Summers is terminated. Your access is revoked, and HR will send your final check by noon." The room gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck the oxygen dry. Rachel's eyes welled up, her hands gripping the table's edge, but Isabella's expression didn't soften. This wasn't personal. This was principle. She turned to the others, her voice steady but commanding. "I don't need special treatment, but I expect basic respect for every client, known or not. You didn't know who I was, and that's fine. But you chose to treat a stranger like she was less. That ends today." Her words were a decree, each syllable a brick in a new foundation. She faced Kenneth, who stood rigid, his green eyes fixed on her with a mix of awe and apprehension. "The rest stay, but they'll undergo retraining," she said. "I want a detailed report by Monday, clean, honest, no excuses. You know how I operate." Kenneth nodded, his jaw tight. "Understood, Ms. Morgan." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of respect, as if he were seeing her for the first time. The room was silent, the weight of Isabella's words pressing down like a physical force. Rachel sat frozen, tears streaking her mascara, while the others stared at the table, their faces pale, their confidence shattered. Isabella picked up her clutch, her movements graceful but final. She turned to leave, pausing only to glance at Jasmine Carter, the young teller who had recognized her name. Jasmine stood near the door, her eyes wide but steady, a flicker of pride in her posture. Isabella gave her a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement that spoke volumes. Then she walked out, her heels clicking softly, leaving the conference room in a stunned hush. The reckoning was over, but its echoes would linger, a warning to those who mistook silence for weakness. Outside, the world waited, and Isabella Morgan was ready to reshape it. The glass doors of the Euclid Avenue bank branch hissed shut behind Isabella Morgan, sealing the stunned silence of the conference room within. At 10:15 a.m., the Cleveland sky was bruising with clouds, their shadows stretching across the parking lot like a warning. Isabella stood by her sleek black Audi, her long jet-black hair stirring in the autumn breeze, her tailored white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt as pristine as when she'd arrived. But the air around her crackled with the aftershock of her reckoning. She wasn't just a woman who'd fired a teller. She was the 28-year-old CEO of Apex Financial Group, a force who'd reshaped the branch's destiny in under an hour. Her minimalist leather clutch rested against her hip, a quiet companion to the storm she'd unleashed. Yet her face was calm, her dark eyes scanning the horizon, as if she were already plotting her next move. She leaned against the car, arms crossed, her posture relaxed but commanding, like a general surveying a battlefield. The weight of the morning, Rachel's dismissal, the staff's stunned faces, Kenneth's grim nod, settled around her, but it didn't burden her. Isabella thrived in moments like these, where power met principle, where silence spoke louder than shouts. A low rumble announced the arrival of a gray SUV, and out stepped Marcus Langston, her COO, a broad-shouldered man with a salt and pepper goatee and a baritone voice that could soothe or intimidate. His charcoal blazer was sharp, his stride purposeful as he approached. "Everything good?" he asked, his eyes searching hers for the truth. "Not quite," Isabella said, a faint smile breaking through, like sunlight piercing the clouds. "But it's handled." Her voice was steady, each word a brick in the foundation of her resolve. "We need HR to draft a retraining program, comprehensive, no fluff. Focus on respect, accountability, and client interaction. And keep an eye on Jasmine Carter, the young teller. She's sharp, sees what others miss, project management potential, maybe more." Marcus nodded, pulling out his phone to type a note, his fingers moving with the efficiency of a man used to turning orders into action. "Press might catch wind of this," he said, glancing up. "Firing a teller in person? That's headline bait. Want me to prep a statement?" Isabella's smile sharpened, her eyes glinting with intent. "Let it leak," she said softly. "It's a lesson, not a secret." She straightened, her hair catching the breeze, and slid into her Audi, the engine purring to life like a contented beast. As she pulled away, the branch loomed in her rearview mirror, a small kingdom she'd just reordered. But the ripple effect of her actions was only beginning. Inside, Kenneth Harper stood in the lobby, his navy suit slightly rumpled, his green eyes scanning the remaining staff like a hawk. The conference room door was still closed. Rachel Summers sequestered inside, her mascara-streaked face a private wreckage. The other employees, Derek, the junior manager, two tellers, huddled near the counter, their whispers sharp with fear and awe. Kenneth's voice cut through, low and commanding. "Ms. Morgan could have gutted this branch, fired every one of you, and started fresh," he said, his words heavy with truth. "She didn't. That's not mercy. It's a challenge. She watches how you treat people, especially those you think don't matter. Don't waste this chance." His gaze landed on Jasmine Carter, the young black teller who'd recognized Isabella's name. She stood near the front desk, clutching a notepad, her eyes steady despite the chaos. "Jasmine," Kenneth said, his tone softening but firm. "Ms. Morgan asked for you. Outside now." Jasmine blinked, her breath catching, then hurried through the glass doors, her heart pounding like a drum. Outside, the clouds had thickened, casting the parking lot in a moody gray. Isabella stood by her car, her presence magnetic even in stillness. Jasmine approached, her notepad a flimsy shield against her nerves. "Ms. Morgan, You wanted me? She asked, her voice small but clear. Call me Isabella, she said, her smile warm, disarming, like a sunrise after a storm. You recognized my name but didn't dismiss me when I asked for Marcus. Why? Her eyes locked on Jasmine's, searching, not accusing. Jasmine shifted her weight, her fingers tightening on the notepad. You carried yourself with purpose, she said, her voice gaining strength. I read the memos, sure, but even without them, you didn't seem like someone who'd walk in without a reason. People like that deserve to be heard. Isabella's eyes softened, a spark of approval flickering. Ever consider leadership? She asked, tilting her head, her hair a dark cascade against her shoulder. Jasmine's eyes widened, caught off guard. Someday, maybe, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to claim the possibility. Isabella nodded, satisfied. You'll hear from Marcus. Keep that instinct. It'll take you further than any manual. She opened her car door, pausing to add, Don't let anyone dim what you see. Jasmine stood rooted, overwhelmed as Isabella drove off, the Audi's taillights vanishing into the gray morning. Back inside, Kenneth gathered the staff in the lobby, his voice ablade. This isn't over, he said. Ms. Morgan's not the type to forget. You've got retraining coming, and I expect every one of you to show up changed. The staff nodded, their faces pale, the reality of their near miss sinking in. Rachel's desk sat empty, a silent testament to the cost of disrespect. Jasmine returned quietly, her notepad now a talisman, her mind racing with Isabella's words. The ripple effect was spreading through the branch, through Apex, through every person touched by Isabella's stand. The clouds overhead promised rain, but in their shadow, a new order was taking root, one built on respect, forged in a single, unforgettable morning. A week had passed since Isabella Morgan's seismic reckoning at the Euclid Avenue Bank branch, and the air in Cincinnati crackled with a different kind of energy. At 2:00 p.m., the sleek, glass-walled boardroom of Apex Financial Group's headquarters hummed with anticipation. 20 interns, their polished shoes gleaming and notebooks open, sat around a mahogany table, their nervous energy palpable. The room smelled of fresh coffee and ambition, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a city skyline kissed by late autumn sun. At the head of the table stood Isabella, her long jet-black hair cascading over a burgundy dress that hugged her 5'8" frame, its rich hue amplifying her commanding presence. The 28-year-old CEO of Apex was no longer just a name in memos. She was a legend, her actions at the branch whispered about in every corner of the company. Isabella's dark eyes swept the room, each in turn meeting her gaze with a mix of awe and trepidation. Her minimalist leather clutch rested on the table, a quiet relic of the morning that had changed everything. She folded her hands, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the room's tension like a blade through silk. Respect doesn't come with a title, she began, her words deliberate, each one a seed planted in fertile minds. How you treat someone you think is nobody, that's your true resume. It's what separates those who lead from those who merely manage. The interns scribbled furiously, pens scratching like a chorus. Emily Parker, a white intern with a blonde ponytail and a notepad already half filled, leaned forward, her blue eyes locked on Isabella. Her neat blazer and poised pen betrayed an ambition that burned brighter than most. Isabella noticed, her gaze lingering on Emily for a moment, as if sensing a spark that could ignite. You'll walk into rooms where people judge you by your appearance, your name, your shoes. Isabella continued, pacing slowly, her heels clicking softly. Let them, but never measure yourself by their scale. Your worth is in your actions, in the respect you give when no one's watching. She stopped at a whiteboard, picking up a marker with a grace that made the act seem ceremonial. In bold, deliberate strokes, she wrote 4 words: Respect shapes our legacy. The room fell silent, the weight of the phrase sinking in. An intern in the back, a young man with glasses, adjusted his tie, his eyes glistening as if the words had struck a personal chord. Isabella turned, her voice softening but no less powerful. What happened at that branch wasn't about me. It was about a culture that tolerated dismissal, that looked past people who didn't scream important. That's a failure of leadership, and it's on all of us to fix it. Emily raised her hand, her voice steady despite the room's intensity. Ms. Morgan, was it hard not to react in that moment? To stay calm when you were disrespected? Her question hung in the air, bold but genuine, drawing nods from her peers. Isabella's lips curved into a rare, authentic smile, her eyes glinting with a fire that hadn't dimmed. Every part of me wanted to flip that counter over, she admitted, her candor drawing gasps and chuckles. But yelling doesn't teach. Silence does. Silence that forces people to hear their own mistakes. Emily scribbled the words, her pen moving like it was chasing a revelation. Isabella's gaze softened, recognizing a hunger for growth that mirrored her own at that age. As the session ended, the interns filed out, buzzing with inspiration. But Emily lingered, clutching her notepad like a lifeline. She approached Isabella, her steps tentative, but her eyes resolute. "Ms. Morgan," she said, her voice trembling with determination, "your leadership, it's unlike anything I've seen. I want to learn from you. May I apply to be your assistant?" Her words were a gamble, a young woman betting on her own potential in the presence of a titan. Isabella studied her gaze piercing but not unkind. She reached into her clutch, pulling out a business card with a single, elegant motion. "Send your resume to Marcus Langston," she said, handing it over. "Show me you mean it." Emily's fingers closed around the card, her breath catching, as if she'd been handed a key to her future. Months later, Emily Parker stood at Isabella's side, her blonde ponytail replaced by a sleek updo, her role as assistant sharpening her into a force of her own. She absorbed Isabella's blend of grace and steel, learning to navigate boardrooms with the same quiet power. Across town, Jasmine Carter, the young teller from the branch, enrolled in a leadership program, her name circling in Apex's talent pipeline. Her desk at the branch was now a hub of efficiency, her notepad filled with ideas inspired by Isabella's words. "Keep that instinct." Back at the branch, Rachel Summers' absence was a silent lesson, her desk reassigned, her name erased from the system. Kenneth Harper, his Navy suit now a familiar sight, oversaw retraining with a rigor that echoed Isabella's standards, his respect for her deepening with every report he filed. The branch's culture was shifting, each employee hyper-aware that respect wasn't optional, it was mandatory. Years later, in a boardroom much like the one where it began, Emily Parker stood as Apex's CEO, succeeding Isabella, who now chaired the board. At her first meeting, Emily wrote on the whiteboard, "Respect shapes our legacy." She glanced at Isabella, seated at the table's end, her burgundy dress a nod to that pivotal day. Isabella nodded, a quiet pride in her eyes, her long hair still a cascade of power. The Euclid Avenue incident hadn't just changed a branch, it had forged a company, a legacy built on respect, one action at a time. The interns' notebooks, Jasmine's leadership track, Emily's rise, all were ripples from a single morning, proof that power lies not in titles, but in standards. Isabella's legacy wasn't in the wealth of Apex or the banks she'd acquired. It was in the people she'd inspired, the cultures she'd reshaped, the quiet moments where respect became a revolution. What a memorable journey. Isabella's story challenges us all. How would you handle disrespect in her shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing your take. If this tale of power and principle moved you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell to catch our next story. Share where you're watching from. Let's connect across the globe. A huge thank you for joining us today. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until next time, keep raising standards, and we'll see you in the comments in our next video.